Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Scrollers Podcast. Once again, we're having a fantastic conversation. We're going to be talking about the movie everyone seems to be talking about. It seems like either half the world's seen it or at least is pretending to. It's Christopher Nolan's the film The Odyssey, and it's a fascinating journey. Just to explore the timeline to see what folks have been debating on this topic. It might be an interesting turning point in culture. We're going to discuss that today. We're going to discuss that with my good friend Nick Free Rillian. Nick, how are you doing today?
Doing great. The numbers seem to show that half the world indeed has seen it. But yeah, I mean, there's something about, I think, Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, and then this movie in particular, that you can't not talk about it as standalone. Like, you have to talk about the noise surrounding it, like the cultural moment, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's sort of instant coiling up between the film itself and the noise around is apropos for our moment.
Yeah. I got so many thoughts. I know you do too. You know what? Like, for table setting, I mean, it's been fascinating. I think when something pops off this hot with a summer blockbuster, we start, like, we're not even talking about the movie. Oftentimes, we're talking about the importance of movies in our culture and what movies are supposed to be. And there's like rival definitions of what a movie should be and what it should do, I feel like. And I think that's fascinating. That's kind of worth it for a debate right there, in a way. And we traded some initial ideas on this particular topic, but like, did you get the sense that Nolan has an intention of what he wants his movie to do, like what he wants it to say and what he doesn't want it to say? Like, did he have a particular, like, he had a clearly defined vision of not just the story or how to be authentic or accurate to the story, but like what he wanted his movie specifically to do? Maybe even
Yeah,
what his philosophy of movies are, you know? And
yeah,
feel free to dive into that.
yeah. I mean, if um, I'm not a Nolan head, but not because I'm not, as much as because I'm not any a stand for any director. I just haven't dove that deep, so I don't know much about his philosophy. I'm sure he's talked about it um, places, and
Hmm.
he's a pretty old school guy, as goes film. I mean, he like types out all his scripts and hand delivers them, and doesn't have a smartphone. Uh,
Yeah.
so he, that there says a decent amount. And then also, like, in his filmography, I like, not a lot of showrunners or directors are kind of like able to not go full woke, for lack of a better term, but also not be not address the things that the woke movement would address. You know what I'm saying? Um, and
Okay.
like
Mm-hmm.
with Oppenheimer, I mean, like, he took on a very, like, what would be considered, I guess, a more progressive or liberal position, right? Of like critiquing the creation and detonation of the atomic bomb,
Mm.
but he doesn't play the cultural script of just pure condemnation. Look how bad this is. Like a bad anti-war film, it just focuses on the horror, and then, like, that's it. Like, look how bad this is. But he's doing something else there and here. Um,
Mm.
So long way of saying uh, he's got to have certain things he's wanting to um, come across in the art, but
Hmm.
it doesn't seem propagandistic. Like like even with the theme throughout this whole thing of hospitality, I think I there's a podcast I listen to from a pretty like LA decently well off, probably lives in the gated community liberal guy, and he loved the Odyssey. And I'm wondering in the back of my head, I think I know how you're probably taking this messaging. But the thing about Nolan and his works is he doesn't he doesn't he doesn't explain to you what hospitality has to mean. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
there's a million other directors who could have told that who could have used the same script and then like really shown you what they mean by hospitality and how it means how it lands in our moment. But he's like he doesn't go. You know? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like he doesn't go all the way
Yeah.
to like mansplain immigration policy, but he
Yeah.
also leaves the door open to like obviously that discussion on a national scale wouldn't be off the table, but he's talking about hospitality as such and in a deeper way than just the surface level geopolitical way. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw some of the hype around in the controversy around the Zeus's golden rule,
Yeah,
and
Zeus's rule, Zeus's law. Like I've heard that
yeah,
somewhere before.
and people said the film was trying. The commentary I saw was that the film is about not being a good host, but the movie I saw, that might have been Zeus's golden rule, but the movie thematically in plot and in intent and all the poignant moments had as much to do with what it looks like to be a bad guest as much as it is about being a bad host. So that muddies
Yes,
the waters
exactly.
tremendously if you're just trying to look at it from an immigration policy perspective.
Yes,
Because the whole what's
extraordinarily.
happening in Ithaca, is about bad guests and how
Yep.
can you get rid of them? You can't if
Yeah.
you get rid of So
Yeah,
I
that's
really appreciated that it was really complex on that front, and
yeah,
it
it's
didn't
got
give a easy pass to anyone.
exactly. That's what I'm getting at. There's like a left hand, right hand dynamic. Like on one hand,
Hmm.
um, he he returns to kind of pass things off to uh to his son who's in on empathy. On the other hand, he wrecks absolute hell on everyone who's not supposed to be there. You know, it's both. He does both.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like that with yeah. So there's probably a simple way to put this, but yeah, I think yeah he I think we think both hospitality, xenia, welcoming the stranger is like a simple thing, but like you said, the other and maybe on the other hand, people could think that protecting the borders and protecting identity is such a simple thing. It's like these are complex things that are you that have to work together, um, and whatever side someone lands on in like the political discourse or the cultural discourse at large, um, there are no simple answers. Like, guess what? In Christianity, um, hospitality is tied to salvation. You know, and
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people like in my circles would absolutely understand that and know how to be hospitable and apply it on a personal level. But sometimes, like the cultural discourse gets so heated and people get so lost in the debate, they end up like forgetting that basic point. You know, that like uh, hospitality is tied to salvation. You know, you can't get so lost in the big conversation that you stop focusing on or applying these things in your day to day life. So anyway, that there's me getting lost in the cultural conversation, not the movie. So following your lead, Matt.
No, yeah, yeah. And I mean we're like out we're starting at the outside and we're going in, you know. Um
That's right.
you know the other thing I think is I've kind of posted a bit about it on X. Like this is the only thing I've been just trying to externally process in the media sphere is what we think the Odyssey and the Iliad are, and I think we think that they're a book that you're supposed like. There's an idea about canonicity that I think is pretty modern, and maybe comes from like a Western culture that's very Protestant influenced, where we've got a book that's the golden source of
Uh-huh.
of what something is, and in order to do a good job, you have to, you know, we've got these terms like you have to be faithful to the source material, and that means don't change the plot, don't add any new characters, don't give any twists that
Yeah.
I didn't see coming from the book, and I think all of that's okay,
Uh-huh.
but that's not the ancient Greek perspective on the story.
Yeah.
They didn't think they didn't think the story was a book, even though they eventually wrote it down. They thought it was like a sandbox in which they could play with all kinds of different themes, and they could write, you know, they could add much later, hundreds of years later, they could say, you know, what if Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter to ensure
Right.
the
Like
wars?
Tolkien's fairy stew.
Yeah.
Things can get added in and taken out, and you taste it and add a little salt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be interesting if we played with um I I guess all that to say that I think like it worries me that we don't have many living stories in our culture anymore, because all of them are dead on they're all written on dead pieces of plant matter. They're all written in books. And
Yeah.
that concerns me because the Greeks, like the classical world, and the Romans, you've seen what people have said about how the Aeneid influences this work. Like,
Yep.
if the story, if we allowed it to live, if we thought it was powerful and relevant and moving and important enough to live, we would engage I think, and we would allow it to be a story about PTSD or something, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm worried that when we start to narrow that, I mean, not only are we're not really doing art anymore, but we're not even, and we're also not being faithful to the culture that created it, despite that we say that's our intention.
Yeah.
Because they had fun with that stuff, but
Yeah.
like I don't even know what we're doing. I think we're just merely trying to use storytelling as a skin suit. We're really going in hot here. We say that we care about stories, but what we really care about is having winning the frame on history, I guess, and historical accuracy, and what we think what the past should look like. Like what's the correct viewport from our cultural perspective on what the past looked like. And that's a
Yeah.
worthy conversation to have. But if like we can't make art in that space. Like something is
Right.
broken when you just have like we're using art as a tool to debate who gets to own the past. And
Uh-huh.
that's a really tragic place. That's a place where nobody wins, in my view. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
Well, it is important to point out. I have some um, sympathy for the reactionism to changing story, because we have been
Hmm.
through like a decade and a half of skin suiting story for the sake of subversive propaganda. Like that's
Yep.
just been like Hollywood's MO for,
Totally.
and I mean like two all the way up to 10, like not even a little bit, like just like I laughed, but I went and saw the live action uh Aladdin like 7 years ago or whatever,
Yeah.
and you know th at the end, instead of Aladdin kind of taking his place and it's being this rags to riches story, this absurd like peasant boy becomes freaking imam or sultan rather. They have Jasmine become sultan, whatever.
Oh,
I mean,
really? I didn't know that.
yeah.
That's funny.
I mean, talk about like fundamentally altering the story, you know. And plenty of talks have been had about, you know, the live action Snow White and all this stuff. And again, it's not that like it was an adaptation done to like that was tinkered with to fit the times. It subverted the entire message of the story. Um, and so I can understand a reaction to tinkering, but you're right. Like if there's any story that you can't like, but also that critique is too easy because what do you want? Just like you end up playing the DEI card in reverse. Like as long as the DEI meets historically accurate, I'm good. It's like don't use that lens. Like that can't be
Yeah.
your only lens. You can go watch Troy, which is a way worse story. You know, that's like the most materialist crap. You know, it's exciting. It's more racially accurate. They actually have someone hot at for your main lady parts. But congratulations, like that's not that's not the story of that's not true to the classical tradition. But anyway, my my main point being, if there's any story that you can be allowed to tinker with in like a post-Christian West, it would be this one, which goes through the Greek lens and then the Roman lens and then the Christian lens. As you know, as you pointed out to me early, um, and so it's not like a story like this, especially this. It's not if you're going to tinker; it's how, and you got to judge those. First of all, understand them, because I haven't yet come across a critique that seems to be like grounded in understanding of what's going on. Really, I think like it's just such an easy read to put on the anti-woke lens and be like, well, this is woke, this is woke, this is obviously woke. It's like it's just that's low-hanging fruit. Like you'll see what you're looking for if you do that. And in this movie, you can. I can point to several instances where if that's what I was looking for, that's what I would be seeing. But
Hmm.
this is a story that in any classical story they come about because they were tinkered with. That's how we get them. They were
Mm.
tinkered for a long time,
Hmm.
and especially when it comes to film, there can be a there's an inevitability to tinkering, obviously. But I don't know. There was a lot of tinkering done here, and I think a lot of it was really interesting. So I can
Yeah.
understand the
Maybe
reaction to
people.
tinkering.
It could be like folks just feel like we're not ready yet to play in the sandbox with any stories anymore. Like we're still in defense mode, and we got to have a zero tolerance policy. But I mean, good luck. I mean, I thought we learned that like if we're just waiting around for Hollywood to write conservative stories or something, like it's never going to
Yeah,
happen. So like if you're not writing your own stories, and you're just waiting for Hollywood to do it, then I don't know. At some point, you have to be willing to at least have a complex conversation about, uh, they're gonna they own the storytelling medium. They convinced us that they get to be the only ones who tell stories. They're the only ones making movies, and we're watching them. So
yeah,
and they're going to play with them and they're going to rewrite them. So maybe we have to like we either have to like not play the game at all, uh, go build our own sandboxes separately, or we have to be willing to call balls and strikes, even in the midst of a debate about what history is and what accuracy should look like. You know,
Yeah.
this is one of those moments where you might want to call. I don't know if it's a home run, but I think we got some people on base because of this this hit.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's
what other thing? Like I'm reading the opening lines. This is the A.T. Murray uh, translation from the 20s. But like, if you just read the opening lines, Homer sets the stage really clearly. This is going to be a tragedy. Like he tells you up front what to expect thematically.
yeah.
When he says, "Tell me, O Muse, of the man of many devices, who wandered full many ways after he had sacked the sacred citadel of Troy." Uh, like why did he sack the sacred citadel? Like that sounds like a good place. Why'd he sack it?
Right.
Maybe he's got some stuff he's got to work through. you know.
Yeah.
Many were the men whose cities he saw, and whose mind he learned, aye, and many the woes he suffered in his heart upon the sea, seeking to win his own life and the return of his comrades. Yet even so he saved not his comrades, though he desired it sore, for though their own blind folly they perished. Fools who devoured the kine of Helios Hyperion, but he took from them the day of their returning. Of these things, goddess, daughter of Zeus, beginning where thou wilt, tell thou even unto us. So that's the story. Is guy does arguably bad thing. He sacks
Yes.
the sacred citadel, and then he wants to get home, and he wants to get his men home, and you could try to save your men, but sometimes you can't save them from ultimately you can't save them from themselves, and you're going to watch each and every one of your men slip out of your fingers, out of your grip, no matter how hard you tighten your fist. They're going to fall out. The gods are going to pluck them out of your hand.
Yeah.
That's the movie I saw. So
Also,
I think
Matt.
I think that was pretty thematically respectful of the source material.
Yes. And I'm cutting ahead to segments here, but I can't resist that very opening line of Homer being chastised for stacking the sacred citadel of Troy, but then and wanting to get his guys home, needing to return home, wanting to return home. If this isn't a follow up to Oppenheimer, I don't know what is. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
We talked
Explore
about the
that.
post World War II. We talked
Yeah.
about the post World War II consensus. Like
Hmm.
you won using a trick of technology, in our case,
Hmm.
that you probably shouldn't have done. Right? That's a whole other debate. But we're in the
That's
Nolan
good.
universe here. Okay. Um, and then it's like, well, now you got to return home. And anyway, we talk about post World War II stuff all the time, and like this seeming to be the era where it's like, there's again in certain conservative spaces, which I have a lot of sympathy for and alignment with. There's like this revisionist history of like the post World War II world. It's like, I'm sorry, that's like, there's plenty of times in our history where just men just vacated responsibility, you
Hmm.
know. And I know I'm getting further down than World War II, but it's like there was a time when dudes sacrificed going to church on Sundays for watching football, you know, which is a manifestation, I think, of what I'm getting at. And so, anyway, you win the war through a trick. You got to return home and get the suitors out and run the show. I'm now mixing metaphors a bit, but eventually we'll get to the post World War II stuff.
Well, there's a lot there. We might as well jump into that now, then, I suppose, because that was something that honestly I think we all are used to navigating the the first half of a post World War II consensus of like
Yeah.
uh what was the cost we paid. Like we weren't asked how much of a cost this was. We're still finding out how much debt we're in, uh morally, even from the
Yeah.
cost of the war, and we feel really bad about it. And maybe the commies should take us over or something. I don't know. But like, but the other half, which I think Nolan is actually was really radical and risk, um, had a was willing to take serious risks as a Hollywood director, was to explore a story that doesn't end in just the fallout from a war. It actually ends in the reconciliation of the family, the return of the
Exactly.
father, elevation of the son, the faithfulness
Yep.
of the bride. I don't know what to do with
Yes.
that. That
Well,
almost feels
that's what
like, yeah. What do you think?
that's what I was getting at earlier. It's like I'm used to this script of like, okay, you show the horrors of
Yeah.
war, right? And there's even when in some of the later scenes when he's kind of cruising through Ithaca, like I'm not sure, or not Ithaca, Troy, like I'm not sure if actually this is good. And but then in between, like looking around and being like, oh, like looking at the horror, he'll just like slash some dudes, you know? It's an incredible shot. Uh, like he'll like look around at the horror and like slaughter, and not only is a lot of it like kind of off scene and implicit, which I like, because again, you could just zone in on like, look at how bad these guys are, like look at the rape, but he leaves it all kind of like subtle. Like he leaves a lot of subtlety for the horrors of war, which a lot of ancient texts tend to do. It'll be like one line, about pillaging an entire village and burning it to the ground. And that's kind of how he does it. Like there's that one scene where the village is like, um, or no, his dudes are like, you can trust us, and they're like, yeah, we don't know about that. And he's like, well, we're the good guys. We're not the people from the sea. But their whole village is burning. They just pillaged it.
Yeah.
You know, and so no one will show all of this, and then have the audacity to be like to have the audience empathize and identify with this guy. Like he still has to get home. He's still the rightful king, and needs to pass it on to his son and get the suitors out of there. Right? That's so complex. That's also why I say it's like a interesting pairing or follow up to Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer, again, he could have just showed this terrible thing and left you with a nice moral lesson. Atomic bomb bad, Americans bad. But it
Yeah.
was more complex film than that. And I don't even know quite what he's landing on, other than like, what are you going to do now? Because you can't just sit in shame and give up your home to the suitors, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like he was forced to tell a story he didn't want to tell. He picked that story. He was like, the time is right. This is the hour where now we have to we got to turn the page and tell the next chapter.
Yeah.
And it's
And
a
speaking
it's
of,
a positive chapter, which is really
right,
radical.
and you asked earlier about like, is he aware of like any sort of messaging? He does seem to have some pulse, almost like a subconscious pulse on the culture, because what, 10 plus years ago, he came, like for all the World War II things to focus on, he decided to focus on Dunkirk, which was not a classic like Band of Brothers kill the bad guys. It was like, well,
Hmm.
we got ourselves into a corner, time to retreat, and we're going to need everyone involved, and we're barely going to get out of here, and it's going to require a ton of self-sacrifice from men. Not a woman in that movie, entire movie, Dunkirk. Like, like this is wild.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That
and
was
yeah.
a
Anyway,
funny movie, because yeah, like what is such a poignant. Like he's British, right? Like originally,
yeah,
this is pretty bad that I'm saying. So they know Dunkirk better than we do historically,
right,
but it was interesting again to voluntarily pick that story and spend a couple years making it.
exactly.
To say I'm going to take something let's. I'm going to take a failure and tell how the resilience of humanity turned it into a moral success in a way.
Yes.
And that was actually a really interesting thing to hear 5 or 6 years ago when that came out. Absolutely
Hmm.
interesting. And now he's and that was a new chapter in a way. And now we've got an additional chapter of we're not just gonna talk about we're not just gonna pick a story that ends in a failure, but we found a way to turn it into a success. We're actually going to tell a story that ends in a success.
Yeah.
I don't know why he did
Yeah.
that. He was so real for doing that, but I don't know why what he sees on the horizon. But I think people are feeling like there might be a time that this might be the time to start talking about next chapters, which I think that's so fascinating. Because it honestly, Nick, like I got the serious impression. I mean, we say post World War II. Some people have pointed to boomers and Vietnam, and that being like I didn't get that impression. I mean, this is so like desert coded that I got like
Yeah.
Desert Storm. I got like
Yeah.
Operation Iraqi Freedom. I got 20 years in Afghanistan. War and Treasure. Like that's the vibe I got. Like a guy Matt Damon's age, you know, and all like the is it worth it, for the millennial uh traumas that folks have gone through with decades of war.
Yeah.
And Gen X. That's the vibe I got, and he was like,
Hmm.
Where does that leave us?" And that felt
Yeah.
imminently poignant. And and just to give you a little bit more, you know, people have also been pointing out the language choices because people
Yeah.
expected something to feel more arcane, maybe with the language, or um,
Good idea.
everybody was going to adopt a British accent so that it sounded old, or
Yeah.
people are going to use, like there's no nicknames. You're going to hear father, like Spider-Man. Tom Holland's going to say father. He's not going to say dad. But there was an intentional decision, and I want to suggest that's another uh, opportunity that Nolan intentionally took because he wanted to say something to us today. He thought that the Odyssey could be a mirror for our culture today, and he wanted it to
Yeah.
feel intensely immediate and resonant, and for us to recognize ourselves in that story. He didn't want to just take us on an escapist adventure. And if he had taken us on an escapist adventure, I think a lot of people would have had fun, and he would have made a lot of money. But instead, he wanted to do something that actually didn't feel very exotic, didn't feel very ancient. He actually wanted to force us to look at ourselves and look at our challenges and our failures and look at what fate has brought to us and
Yep.
then ask us, well, what are you going to do about it now?
Yeah.
Are you going to kick out the suitors?
Yep.
I think that's what he did.
Yeah.
Even in the language decisions, I think that was evident. What do you think?
I think that's a good point because, again, someone like even if you're not someone's like not a fan of Nolan or like they're a film head and Nolan's too much of a mass audience guy for their taste, like he is certainly a genius and someone that that creative with that much creative force doesn't just go, oh yeah, I just wanted to make it more more accessible, more everyday language. Like it's not Nolan's version of the Message Bible. Like he's way too creative and thoughtful and tricky. He's a tricky fella. Like he
Yeah.
he does pull tricks. Um, and pointing out also the film's opening with Travis Scott. Like he does his little um, spoken word, and then in his last stomp ends with a trick. That's how the film opens, as a trick. You know. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. Like I don't know. exactly what his thinking was, or if someone like, again, creating at that level is, if all this is even conscious. But I do not think at all it was like just like a message translation of the Odyssey. Not one bit. Not for a second. It's
Yeah.
probably much more something like what you're laying out. You know, sounds good enough to me.
Yeah. 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 Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what else?
I mean, again, I'm, this will be my last apology for like making more of this than what it is, but like also interesting, like freaking Telemachus with his mom who's holding off suitors, waiting for dad, like in the age, I don't know, just put yourself in the shoes of Telemachus, like in the age of single motherhood and absent fathers, you know?
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying that was a thought that crossed his mind when he wrote the script, but it's in the air, and I can't disconnect those two things, you know? Um, Again,
Yeah.
not to univocally declare that's what it's about. It's just that phenomenon that, again, post World War II is like when that happens, that phenomenon. That's when it starts after the war. That's when we
Mm-hmm.
liberalize, and it's all connected in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I only brought that in because his attempt to bring it down to the everyday to make sure everyone's like, hey, this is like real life, everyday, normal stuff. This isn't just for an ancient world. I don't need to make this sound old, or classical or elite. Like this is every day. This can be mundane because there's a lot of films, a lot of period pieces that get so drab and mundane, trying to be historically accurate. But it's like that's their only goal. It felt like the mundanity. Yeah, it felt like the mundanity in this film. Yeah, was more to bring it into the everyday. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's easy to appreciate now. There's a lot of talk about sign on and the
Oh
casting
yeah.
decisions. I think I'm kind of, if I'm upset about anything, I'm upset that people misled me
Yeah.
about, because the thematic, like the story there is not about sign on. It's about sign on versus Twilight guy. And
Yes.
if men don't show up,
Yep.
uh, then someone else is going to have to show up and be a man in their stead, and that's going to be a tragedy because that person, the people who have to show up and fill the gap,
Yep.
same as Penelope having, single mom for 20 years, having to having to run Ithaca, and she knows she can't pull this off for much longer because
Yeah.
dad's dad's left the building, he never came home, and she
Yeah.
has to lie to herself and to everyone else about against hope. She has to hope against hope about that.
Uh-huh.
You
Uh-huh.
can't understand Penelope without Odysseus. You can't understand Sinon without Twilight Guy, whose name escapes me, the character he's playing. But that's the pairing in which, and this just goes to like what rich storytelling is. You don't get, I don't know where this comes from. There's this idea that like you understand characters by like, I don't know if it's like Pokemon, like reading the description at the bottom of the card or something, but everyone is this atomized little unit, or maybe it's just IMDb. Like, I don't know what it is, but like well told stories are actually, it's characters and relationships. You actually don't,
Right.
just even the way you've got to talk about Sinon, you have to talk about Sinon's relationship to Odysseus. You have to talk about Sinon's relationship to Twilight Guy. That
Antonia
is
too.
how that character is defined,
Mhm.
and or even just down to like phrases that were said in the film, like Odysseus saying it was Sinon was Odysseus's bravest soldier, I think it was. That
Uh-huh.
got a lot of people um, fired up. But
Yeah.
you can't. I don't think you can understand that in the atomistic way that we typically try to talk about it in storytelling. Because what that is saying is that um, I mean that's meant to be in contrast with Twilight Guy, who is not brave,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean. And I thought that was really effectively explored in a really interesting way. Um,
Yeah.
I'm still processing it,
Yeah.
honestly. There could be some imperfections. There's some stuff in Hades, the Hades conversation, that felt like we're expanding the territory a bit too much, so that thematically we kind of got off touch. But um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I heard that somewhere else too, like that being the main critique of that someone didn't like the Hades scene. So that's interesting.
oh really? Oh funny. Yeah.
But on the on the if I can address Sinon and Penelope real
Mm.
quick, like you said, um, the Sinon thing, because in which was from is from the Aeneid, right? That's not in the Odyssey. So
Yeah.
um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, he is telling his own story, which is why you can't. Yeah, he's taking bits and pieces, and telling his own story, a mix of Greek perspective, Roman perspective, and another segment for us. Absolutely 100%, whether he realizes it or not, Christian perspective. I mean, it's all through the freaking movie. Um, the 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 imbued Christianity of the West, like it's all throughout the movie. Like ancient Greeks weren't entertaining the strangers in case it's a god necessarily out of empathy. That's a Christian thing. They did it because they didn't want to anger the gods, those little tricksters, you know. The Christian thing is like, hey, they might be an angel or they might be Christ, so you should attend to them, which
Mm-hmm.
is definitely the feel that it took in the movie, which is again the Christian way to understand these things. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know how many ancient Greeks were like, oh man, look at this beautiful little stranger, homeless person. They could be a god. It was more like, well, crap, dude. If that's Athena, we could be in big trouble. So we better give him a bowl of stew, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, with Sinon, um, in the Aeneid, like Sinon's in on it. But in this movie, Sinon is sold the lie. There, Sinon is not in on it in order to sell another lie. Sinon is tricked in order to sell a trick which they ought not have sold. And again, this is just Nolan's story. And also, Odysseus is kind of condemned for tricking Sinon. Like
Mm.
he doesn't like repent in the movie, but he sort of has to repent because he gets rebuked by Sinon in Hades. Like you shouldn't have
Yeah.
tricked me. And again, as you said, like the the Sinon even being a thing because the guy who was supposed to be brave didn't step up. So Sinon filled the void. Um,
Yeah.
doesn't escape me. Now again, for all I know, in that writer's room, there could be some big meeting where that line was praised as like a poignant, like, wow, we're highlighting this trans person in the culture and kind of going out of our way to
Sure.
say in this story, like, I don't know, that could have been the intention, but in the story, like itself, it's just I think it doesn't stick out to me as blatant propaganda within the story itself. Um, which I want to hear more thoughts to sign up. But real quick on Penelope, um, even in there, she has a couple lines where when Odysseus is gone, she's like kind of freaking out and lamenting about um, like that she can't just be in charge. She's like, it would be a line that you've heard in another story, like some sort of like feminist adjacent screed. And you could read it that way, maybe, but like again, in the story, like number one, she's not stable when she's saying that. She's only saying that because the guy who's supposed to be there isn't there
Yeah.
because he's off on an island doing drugs and sleeping with Calypso. And the only guys who are there aren't suitable. And her son's not a man.
Yeah.
That's why she's freaking out and wants to be in charge. You know, like this is the thing that like I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of
The
conservative
absent
types
men. The men aren't
yes,
in the room. Like that's the whole.
yes,
That's the point of the story. It's the point of the
yes,
original story. The classical revisionists, like the people who played with this and plays, like they understood this too, and somehow Nolan understood it as well, and he thought it was
yeah,
relevant to today. You don't
yeah,
like what the ladies are saying in this movie. Well, they're saying what they're saying because the men are left the building. They didn't show up.
yes,
They traded when they were asked to answer the call. They either didn't answer the call or they did answer it in a way that kept them absent from their families. So that's the
and
whole
and
point.
and in Nolan's story, this is all happening to access the trade route. That's what all this is happening for in Nolan's stories. Again, in this
Okay.
story, people complained about like the like Helen being this foreigner and not a Greek who was the face that launched 1,000 ships. In Nolan's story, she's just kind of like a side character who may or may not have been a traitor. Nolan doesn't really care that much. Like again in his story, she's not that important. Um, but it's all for a trade route. That's why all these good men are gone for a trade route.
If that doesn't
Isn't it
hit,
wild?
nothing will. If that doesn't sound intensely relevant for today, you're not paying attention. I did not
Gosh,
pick up on that. When was that said? Was that Menelaus who brings that up or something?
that is when Odysseus and Penelope are Telemachus is a baby and they're in like their
Oh,
little lodge and they're on the bed and he's like, "Yeah, I got to go to war because Agamemnon said so." And she's like, "Can we just go away? Can we just not do this? Like, why?" He's like, "Well, he really wants this trade route that Troy's in charge of." That's what launches the war in Nolan's story.
it's so
So
dark.
crazy, dude.
It's so dark.
Also, it has to go. It has to be mentioned again. A lot of this is like a lot of the story is kind of like windy and mundane and uh, uh, Kurosawa coded a little bit, like ancient or like classical films. But Agamemnon, the aesthetics, bro,
Yeah, what do you think about that?
incredible.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
it sticks out like Darth Vader would have stuck out in the first Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, holy crap, this guy, you know.
Yeah,
I
they
just think the
went full
aesthetics
Darth Vader.
are so
Yeah.
sick. Yeah.
I think I even bought the spinal cord on the back, which is crazy to say because it would have been easier. I think it would have gone down cleaner if it was a stage production because even though like film used to be allowed to be like stage production costuming and we used to permit that and have fun with it. Do you remember The Fall? Do you remember that movie from like 20 years ago? It was an Indian director. Uh,
No.
like one of the do you remember that movie? It's like supposed to be like surrealist. There's a lot of surrealist moments in Nolan's content sometimes,
Uh-huh.
particularly period stuff, and especially in this one. Yeah, I didn't think he could sell me on the costuming. I that was really going to worry me, honestly. I laughed
Uh,
like everybody else when we got that reveal from the previews, but
yeah.
to never see his face, um, I think was a
Also
really important decision. Yeah,
behind his mask, I don't know about you. I was like, seeing IMAX, I'm like, dude, this looks like the looks maxing guy
yeah, it
behind the
does.
mask.
Yeah,
Like all I see is chiseled features,
yeah,
you know? Which again, dude, think about it. Think about it. Like you could look at that as like, and I don't think this went into the thought at all of like a condemnation of fake masculinity or something like that. But it does fit with what we're talking about here. Like Agamemnon, the most masculine, looks maxing looking dude, is just no brains, all trade route. And Odysseus, who actually has some substance, isn't in on it, but kind of has to because that's how the world works. And then he has to, because he participated being a cog in Agamemnon's looks maxing machine. Then he has to deal with
Yeah.
the fallout and still return home and be a good king and pass it off to his son. Anyway, it does kind of fit. But yeah, absolutely behind that mask, I was like, this looks like a looks maxing guy.
Yeah, yeah. But like, I mean, being a huge enjoyer of not just Homer, but the ancient stories that were told around the Trojan War and the darkness, the shroud of darkness that clouds Agamemnon's features in Sophocles. You know, I really appreciated that they allowed, like, because that's something else that I think we tend to expect nowadays from film is, like, we are so media saturated that we don't even see the fourth wall anymore. Like, we think of film as this, like, invisible medium where it gives us, like, a view from nowhere. And Nolan's still a guy who doesn't give us a view from nowhere. He gave us a view from the level of Odysseus, who has feet of clay, and that's, as we read at the opening of this, like, the story is that Odysseus is very much a man. He's not half divine, you know, and we're gonna see him from his perspective. We're gonna have to see the people that he's engaging with, and who he's loyal to, and who he's enemies with, and who he navigates his complexities with. And I really appreciated that Agamemnon just stayed a force. When we never saw Achilles, but I think he was mentioned by Menelaus. We got some good time with Menelaus. I think he's a man with some complexity, and we saw that too, and I appreciated that. And then just one other note that I still had, and I haven't heard this discussed, but Nolan is really good at I actually like, people complained about the quick pace that this story had, even at 3 hours, that it felt super choppy, and it was just a series of events happening. I didn't read it as a series of events. I read it as memories that were being pieced together by a guy that you catch at, you know, typical Hollywood fashion. You catch him in media res. You catch him eating lotus flowers and trying to remember what his story is, who he, what man is he, as, and then at the same time you're getting Telemachus's he's piecing together who his father is. You're getting his there was that powerful moment with Menelaus where he says, Menelaus says, like, I'm sorry I couldn't give you what you came here for. I can't tell you where your father is. And he said, no, you didn't tell me where he is, but you told me who he is. And that is super valuable, because before I didn't know who he was, and now I know what kind of I know that he's someone that I can admire. I didn't know this until I traveled to talk to you. And that fits that kind of fragmented, rushed, not getting a full picture, just seeing Agamemnon as a Darth Vader figure, like this kind of strange, like, dream world that we're going through at a super fast pace. That works very, very well, I think. You know, I mean, this is the guy who is obsessed. I mean, is there anyone more obsessed with memory than Nolan? Like, that's what all his movies are about.
So, and time.
Time and memory. So of course he's going to take it from that angle.
Home.
Can I find my way? Can I piece memory and time together in a way that's going to work in my favor so I can come home? And very often the case is no.
Right.
But this time the answer was yes. Which was crazy. What do you think about that time and memory in this particular story? People were very divided about how he approached this.
Yeah, yeah. Again, if you just single out that like pacing or feel and look at the canonical work as opposed to the, which we already challenged even that phrase, to the film adaptation, like yeah, you're going to be disappointed, but like Nolan he's not adapting that element. He's adapting the story, and within his story, you have to judge his pacing. And I'm kind of with you. Like it was slower than usual, but um, excuse me. Uh, it, yeah. In fact, that did stick out to me because in previous films, the score. I'll
Yeah.
bring it back to your point, but in previous films, the score is locking me in. I'm spellbound. In this
Yep.
one, the score was not used. I had to lock in myself. Like I had to choose because I was catching myself like 3 hour film. The score isn't spellbinding me. Like I have to pay attention, um, which I thought was really interesting because his previous films, the score is just locking you in. You are totally spellbound. Um, and so the pacing, the slow pacing, did feel intentional. Not like he was just trying to chop everything in, slow it down, speed it up. It felt,
Mm.
yeah, there was a web that was woven.
Yeah. Yeah. Score wise, I just thought it was another. Um, I remember there were a couple moments that felt a little thinner than it should be to serve the scene. But for the most part, like I appreciated the intentionality of that minimalism, even on his
Yeah,
part,
a lot of wind.
because yeah, because that was just another. I feel like it dovetailed with the mundane dialogue, uh, the lack of color, the genericism of the culture that was expressed that allowed it to be. All of these things are meant in my view. I mean, we said this earlier, like it was just meant to lock you into the idea of immediacy and recognizability of ourselves in the story, and not just to sell a movie, but because Nolan felt like this story is a story that needs to be engaged with, and we need to recognize ourselves in the story today. And the minimalism and the score, I think, was his way of um, giving us room to process that. I felt, but to your point, like there were a couple moments I remember thinking, um, at least give me like, I think Penelope had, there was a harp or something, or a lute. There were a couple moments where I was like, okay, so characters do have theme songs, and
Yeah.
he's one of the last people to still do that, and I appreciate that. But there were a couple moments where I was like, I'd like a little bit more. But maybe that's the tension he wanted to give us. If we are the sea peoples, if we
Uh-huh.
are our own destructive force, and the age that we thought would live forever is has already behind us, and we have to figure out what to do with our families in light of this, and we have to figure out if we can come home, then maybe
Yep.
that tension, the absence of the score, um, speaks more than the presence would in that kind of dark age, that the emergent dark age kind of story that he wants to invite us into. Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
And that kind of fits your point of also like the the message Bible language being to help us identify with this ancient foreign culture. But speaking of tricks, another point, the only foreign language spoken in that whole film was the village that got burned, and they were talking like they were looking at the Greeks like skeptically, like, I'm pretty sure you're the bad guys because you just burned our village. They speak Greek. That guy's
it's so
speaking
dark.
Greek. But like Nolan, again, like there's all this flack about like originality and casting of characters, and then he chooses Greek. Like he could have chose a different language, you know, he
Well,
a foreign
bring
language.
that home for us. Why do you think it's? How does that hit you? Tell me why that's such a gut punch.
People are critiquing the diverse cast and the
Mm,
uh and then like wanting it to be more Greek, right? They want more Greeks. And the
yeah,
only Greek in the story is the outsider getting his village burned. I think it's Nolan being like, guys, this is us. Whether you like it or
yeah,
not,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
us, right?
yeah, yeah. We're sending sending women to war because the men aren't showing up. We're the Rainbow Crew who believe that we have a unified story and a unified history that is an inheritor of the best of the past, while
Yeah.
we're burning the villages of the people that also have a claim to it. Maybe we can't see
Yeah.
ourselves
Yeah.
for who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wow.
The the Greek point, that being a Greek person speaking Greek, I got that from Pajot, who I think that might be one of the only points I've like copied, but I'll go watch his analysis if you want more on that point, because he dives pretty deep into it. We kind of have our own spin on it here, which I appreciate, but very much so. Like I was telling you earlier, like I started to notice this thing in Hollywood storytelling where they would have like the very clear bad guys in the dystopian technocracy, like Hunger Games, Maze Runner, things like this. But like in the bad future dystopian society, it was diverse. Like, like and it's not like the good guys were like, a bunch of whiteys, not at all. But it was just interesting that it's almost like that slipped through the cracks, like that the Capitol in Hunger Games is like very racially diverse, and and obviously I don't think, especially as an American, that racial diversity is uh is bad at all. So I really hope that's that I'm not saying that. I was more saying like it's to that point of like uh the obsession with like making sure every station of every company and leadership position in society meet certain quotas seems to be something that was important to the dystopian autocrats in Hollywood films. Like that's what I'm pointing out, which again I found just completely fascinating. And the other thing, which you
Mm-hmm.
see in this film too, is there was a movie with who was the bad guy in the Tom Holland Spider-Man, like the dad of Zendaya, Keaton, is that right? Michael Keaton.
Oh, geez, I don't even know. I thought you were gonna. I was gonna
Okay.
say Willem Dafoe. That was like a different era.
Oh no, no.
That same
Okay.
Rami. Yeah. So I
There's
don't
a
know.
movie with Michael Keaton and Mila Kunis, and it's a it's a very LA movie. Um, like he's like an art curator, and his divorced, and they like co-parent, and he has a new wife, like very modern family. Like everything about the movie is like on the surface kind of woke coded, but the story within that movie itself is a story that like is a return to normativity and generativity. Like there's all sorts of like there's a gay best friend and gay families and whatever, but like it ends up being like little elements of like the person who's able to take care of the kid of the gay parents is like the normal dad. Like in this, there was like 12 things in this story that they were like doing, I think on accident. It's like they couldn't help but revert to like normativity that generates, and you see that here. Like again, this is not a race thing at all, but like it's just interesting people crying about like everyone's not Greek, or everyone should be have pale skin or whatever. It's like look at the three main characters, like Matt Damon, uh, Penelope, and Telemachus. Like it's a mother, a father, and a son who are all, at least in the story, Greeks. You know, so it's like there's still that element of like I'm just not sure what people want. Like, do you want a bad story with a bunch of whiteys? Like, because within the Nolan story, it's a very diverse Greek kingdom because again, it's supposed to be like us, but then it's a return to identity um, with the main characters. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm not even trying to like thread a needle here. I think you get what I'm trying to say because what I'm not trying to say is like everyone needs to return to an ethno state or something like that.
No.
What I am saying is like within these stories where the cast is at least on the surface like massively diversified, there seems to be like a continual like return to at least the heroes or the focus of the story being normative and generative, like in a Western. And you could even reduce that to just like father, mother, child, you know?
Well, and I'll do you one from a different angle. Uh, we're at a maturity point in diverse storytelling now, where we are comfortable, and maybe even like we find it rewarding now as a culture, even from a progressive perspective, people find it rewarding to see uh, a whole bunch of men at the table eating food at Cersei's at her hospitality, and she turns them all into pigs,
Yeah,
brown, black, and white, and then she
exactly.
puts their at the end of the day, um, they all bleed red and they all oink
Uh-huh.
like animals,
And they're all
and
pink.
yeah,
They
and
all
she
have the
puts their
same skin color.
disguises back on at the end. She's like, "Let's get your disguises back on," and then you get diversity again. But I mean,
Great
ultimately,
point.
like that was a big critique that I had back in the day when it I mean, when the conversation started to be about forced diversity, it was like, well, if we're going to bring in folks, are we still saying that everyone is are people, or are we saying that there's different types of people?
Yeah.
Are we saying that there's different qualitative value differences? And at first, we were saying that for a while, and now
Uh-huh.
we're actually saying something really interesting. Like, we're at a maturity point where we can say, um, there's an equality there that there's a qualitative equality in how
Yeah.
these factors are being discussed, that I think is, I mean, that's enormously satisfying to me. I want to be able to say that all men are equal.
Yeah, exactly.
There's many types of men, but I want to say, I want to have a discussion about it. And of course, Cersei herself is not a I mean, people have talked about her being a feminist or something. She may well be, but she's not she's still a villain in the story. So
Yes, exactly.
take what
She
you
she
want about that.
even if she's a feminist in the story, she does the same thing to her own family members that she does to men.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if anyone's known any hardcore feminists, they're tough hang. Even if you're one of the allies, they're a tough hang.
yeah. We get along
Um,
better if my sister is a crow, because
yes,
I can't
exactly.
really abide if she's a person. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like again, I didn't word it well at the beginning. I'm still not wording well, but no one will do this thing where he'll like kind of agree. Like again, Odysseus at the end when they're like, "She's a witch. You should burn her." He's like, you guys kind of had it coming." Like he doesn't say that, but like he does get it. And he doesn't go full. And so yeah, he's just able to like thread these needles
yeah,
between like giving the devil his due, but then also not going full. I don't even want to use the word woke, but like full condemnation. Like, well, we still got to move on. We still got to find some way forward. And there's no formal repentance in this whole story, but there's like an implicit repentance, like at every stage along the way. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. He was Odysseus was allowed to be a complicated man, which I think is what the opening line in that the new translation says. Seek to be obused of a complicated man. I think it's a terrible language choice. I think a lot of people agree on that, but he
Yeah.
is a complicated man, and he's allowed to remain so. He's not a moral arbiter of. He's not used as a device for critiquing half the country or something, or validating the opinions of bicoastal elites or this or like that might be that was a safe assumption to make maybe in earlier years when I don't know people we this like emergent kind of reaction to what the direction Hollywood was going, and people found like a safe spot to camp out in to take shots at what Hollywood was doing.
Yeah.
And that was all valid in a way, but you gotta let the man speak.
Yep.
And he's not saying what he's not saying what folks his previous movies don't play that game that typical Hollywood does, and this movie is not either. It's just yeah, I think it was a fascinating ride. I'm still wondering if we're out of the Dunkirk phase and if we're into the Odysseus phase. That does feel
Yeah.
like a chapter. I feel like he is moving the ball down the field, and he's saying, "Now let's say the next thing." And I don't even know where that's going, but it feels very positive. He did do so. There's something that nobody's mentioned as we start to land the plane. I think it's something that Nolan will do, but really classic Hollywood will do is they build up a trust with the audience, and then at the very end they get to spend all that cash
Yeah.
that and they get to pull one hat trick in the final scene. And he did do it here, where he definitely, I mean, he did rewrite, but he did rewrite the Odyssey at the end but in a really kind of cinematic Hollywood way that I think is satisfying, and probably was even satisfied to the critics, because I didn't see anyone critique the idea of him leaving his son behind and then going retiring with his wife and going on a road trip
Yeah.
to honor his bros, which is not what
Yeah.
happens in any version of this story that I've read.
Yeah.
It's not in Homer, but it felt okay, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably why it escaped criticism. Because we
Yeah.
still let movies do that. They can still do that sort of thing where they get one, they can do one, they can do one trick. We'll let them do one trick, but it has to be at the end. You know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What'd you think about the end?
Yeah. I'm thinking about it through some of the themes we've talked about of like, okay, I'm going to show you all the bad things you've done, but I'm not going to condemn you. But because of this, more or less, you might be exiled, but your son is still the rightful heir, and you were still able to, like, I'm thinking about it through that lens. Again, I'm definitely not trying to univocally say it represents the boomers. Okay. I'm definitely not. But as an example, like you, like you just don't got it, but your son does, or your son might, he's ready, something like that. I'm not trying to make this a generational handoff thing either. Like, I'm more using it to think, or to highlight something, but I'm not even sure what yet. But this theme of like you come to a point where you finally get it figured out. Like, you finally figure out your own sins, and then what do you do now?
Yeah.
Something like that. And it was a way to resolve that.
Yeah.
because all through the story, Telemachus, he has hospitality down. He's like the moralist of the story. Like Zeus's law, Zeus's law, Zeus's law. Like little Tom Holland, is like this little preacher's kid, this little goody two shoes, and not in a bad. I don't mean that in a bad way either. But it's just interesting that like the son being at home while the dad's off at war understood Zeus's law, um, and Xenia and hospitality, like, and that's how I think of it. Is it was a way for that story to be like, you finally figured this out, and you're able to pass it on to your son, and so now it's your son. He's going to take the throne, and you're going to go off, and remember
Yeah.
your men, who you forgot and were like casualties and fodder for your trickery and not realizing your own mistakes. And probably a way to redeem the men too, because it's not like the men were
Mm.
like the good guys. Again, that's where Nolan's so good. He doesn't make Odysseus the bad guy and his men victims of his wiles.
Yeah.
He also doesn't say it wasn't Odysseus' fault. It's like it's both. He's just
Yeah.
able to like he's able to like keep this tension. It's really impressive. You just don't see it much.
Yeah. Yeah. You're helping me realize
If
I didn't even mean to go in this direction, but you're helping me realize once again, like if he's introducing something with that kind of intentionality right at the end, and he changes the story at the end, and he puts his own thumbprint on it at that point, it's for a reason, and it's not just for cinematic flair to just spin that the buildup of trust that one earns over the course of 3 hours. It wouldn't merely be that. It might be because he wants to let us know that it's time for the son finally to have his shot. You
Yeah,
know, in Ithaca,
yeah,
and it's
and
finally time for that generation to voluntarily make that call to let it happen, which is huge.
yeah, and there's absolutely a way to like again putting myself in the shoes of this of the more liberal leaning Obama loving podcaster that I listen to. Like I could
Uh,
absolutely put myself in that shoes and see that ending as like the Warhawk, um, non-empathetic, xenophobic, homophobic generation has to go, and it's time for like our empathetic kids to rise up. I could absolutely see someone reading it like that, and you know what? It kind of fits. And you know what? There could have been plenty people in that writers' room thinking that was what was going on. Maybe even Nolan. I don't know, but that's the thing about like good art is it doesn't lock itself into that, and I don't feel that this story is locked into that. But if I had the
no,
anti-woke lens, I could absolutely be like, well, this is what it's about. What a load of crap. But I think it's deeper than that.
yeah, yeah. And if we're gonna have shared stories again, the way Homeric epics used to bring people together, um,
Yeah,
maybe we have to have different access ports. You know, there's got to be more than one that where people can plug into this, just to get everybody back at the table again, so we could have a conversation through narrative, through story,
exactly.
and we could share those
Because
stories. Yeah,
even if that story took hold among like a group of progressive-minded folk, at least they had that language, so you could then like turn around and someone with a different perspective or insight be like, well, you know, like you could point to other elements in the story, and like at least you have that shared worldview to be like, well, this is how I see it, and this is what happened in the story. Like it's not as univocal as you're making it, because there are
yeah,
traitors, and um, anyway, like yeah, to your point, like if you have at least some decent artistic thing that you share in a culture, you can at least reference it as proof for what you're trying to say. And if it's good art, it doesn't lock into an ideology. And I absolutely do not feel that this is locked into ideology. It just doesn't. It could be again like in people in that production room could think that, but somehow it was able to stay away from just like getting locked into it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what
I
if I
mean,
can make
what else have we learned about hospitality? Like, at some point,
yeah,
you actually have to not do the revenge move, and that is really important, I think, in our culture right
yeah,
now. And that was really clear in this movie.
yeah,
You know, like
yeah,
in the Dunkirk era in like 2014 or whenever that was, maybe just coming home and figuring out how to come home with some dignity after failure was the story that had to be navigated, you know, where we had no idea where the future was going to go. But right now, this, I think maybe that's one of the things that he wants to he let's just say it, that he competently engaged with through this story is, uh, who's going to be the first one to stop like drawing their sword at
uh-huh,
a slight, and who's going to be the one
yeah,
who's actually going to offer a meal for the uh for the just on the cultural, like the political side, just the tension, the civil war side, who's going to end the war by putting a bowl of food that's not going to turn you into a pig in front of
yeah,
the other, in front of the
yeah,
outsider. That could be the way forward to actually start having shared cultural experiences again, the sort of things that people opine about, that was taken from us. It actually might have, the cycle might have actually have to end with you and with me, uh, you know, putting the sword back, you know, back
yeah.
on our belts, back in its hilt, um, and offering a meal instead. I don't know. That sounds like, I know
Yeah,
people might say that it's not time for that, and
yeah.
and maybe Nolan, I don't know, but that's a
But
theme
again,
to play with.
again, like even in the story, though, like Odysseus gets home, Nolan's Odysseus gets home, and it just goes full on like John Wick on the suitors, and and
Yeah.
in the in Homer's Odyssey, like you know, it's even nastier, and but Nolan hints at it with like the slave girl who wasn't loyal, like she 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 gets she's out there. They don't show what happens to her, but they at least he goes out of his way to be like, yeah, she's not spared either. Like Penelope's like, nah, we're done. So yeah, it again. That's like he does hold both. Like it's like super hospitality, kumbaya, and also like John Wick for the illegitimate suitors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The only other thing,
Yeah.
and stop me whenever that I also that I mentioned is like that it's absolutely like Christianity is imbued in the story. Um, even like the terrible scene of Agamemnon carrying his little girl to the sacrifice at the altar. Like there's only like one world religion that got the world to see the beauty of children and that you shouldn't sacrifice them, more or less. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that's Christianity. But then also like the character of Athena, we didn't talk on the gods too much, or even like the giants. But like Athena was like the lamb that was slain at the beginning of the story, at the foundation of the story. Um, and that's his
Yeah.
guide. Is the sacrificial victim. The sacrificial victim is the guide of Odysseus. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
so I again, no one really doesn't. I don't think realize it. He seems to be like a secular humanist, and you know, the scene with Hades, like it's not exactly like death is solved. Uh, it's more like civilizational at the end because Odysseus is like, yeah, we're gonna fall, and then civilization will rise again. We'll remember, and then we'll forget again. Um, but it's not like in your face, cyclical, fatalistic. Um, in fact, I think there's some overlap with like what Nolan's trying to get at, or maybe even hoping for, that finds its fulfillment in Christianity and I don't think the like even like the papal encyclical of Magnificat Humanitas, like magnificent humanity. Nolan, another theme in his films is he does believe in humanity, which is also a Christian belief. Like for all of Christianity's um like yeah, humanity's done and then Christ comes. Like the only thing that views Christianity, sorry, humanity as magnificent, as having a spark of the divine, as there being something at least potentially undying to it, is Christianity. And so even though it's not explicit, I just see a lot of I don't know, I just see a lot of hopeful substance there. And maybe that's me. I don't know, but certainly felt pretty, even if subtly, Christianity imbued.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if Christians don't like a Christian baptizing of pagan myth, this would be the first time in Christian history that we've
Yeah,
made that determination.
right. Yeah,
So
exactly.
if we're making different
And
moves
also,
now, you know,
yeah, it's like, okay, you can Christian baptize the freaking the Freemason, uh,
yeah,
agnostic or deist founding fathers of America, but you can't baptize like Odysseus. Like, come on.
yeah, yeah. And again, that could just be because people want to play. People are fighting a war about who gets to describe the past accurately, I guess. But it's already a war you're playing in an arena. Like you're already playing by the enemy's rules. Why don't you
Yeah,
do something
yeah,
revolutionary? Why don't you play, bring a different game to the table with a different set of rules, a better set of rules, and play with that instead. You know, like
yeah, yeah.
let's talk about uh, a way to engage with the ancient world that was obsessed with hospitality on a cosmic level. They had a theology of hospitality that was very intensely personal to them, and let's weave it together from a perspective that's modern, not to fix it or to update it or to make it palatable, but let's do it in a way that helps us to recognize ourselves in that alien world
Yes.
and realize just how immediate and resonant that world is, not just for modern people who could hardly relate to the challenges and priorities of any of the figures in that story, but to make it to key into the timeless content that people of every generation have been able to find abundantly apparent, that we read in the opening lines
Hmm.
of of the Odyssey. We can see abundantly apparent the pathos of a story like that. And
Yes.
to see that we're a pathos generation, we're several generations deep now into pathos, but like at some point maybe the tragedy can be a comedy. What would that look like? You know,
Yes.
it
Oh, well,
could look
and
like this.
that's the thing. It's like exploring over again the fall of Troy and the Odyssey. It is a way to like Trojan horse, um, like almost like a preparing the way for remembering for a cultural remembering its Christianity and be like there's a reason like people talk about the ancient world um, as like purely like people viewed uh, the like the people who won and who were the most powerful. Clearly, there's a moral component there. They must be good. Absolutely, that's there. But also, it was the same ancient world where kind of like out of nowhere, just identified with Troy, like the defeated city, the lost city,
Yes.
um, who were tricked. Like there's this.
What
So
did they mean by
you
that?
know
Yeah.
exactly like and all these civilizations in the future then like trace their lineage, like, oh yeah, we come from the Trojans. It wasn't just the Romans who did that. Um, and it fits right with Christianity, because Christianity comes in and goes, oh, you think there might be like a moral code and something to there being value in the victim, and you need like reconciliation, like you need validation and fulfillment for that to be a good story. Well, here you go. Like, that's the whole story. That's the God man, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I absolutely see, like,
Nailed it.
I don't know, a re-exploration of the fall of Troy. It just seems like so perfect for remembering who we are, because yeah, what the pagans wrestled with the fall of Troy is, in my opinion, like exactly what Christianity swoops in to answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So good. Yeah. I'm so glad. Um, I'm so glad we had a movie that would rock the culture in a way. Maybe just in our little timeline. Who knows how
Yeah,
big of a deal this movie is? It's kind of hard to see this early on, but it feels bigger. It feels like it does feel like an interesting turning point. That's what's being offered to us in this film, and and it certainly got people debating in a way that feels like a turning point, where some people don't feel ready, or they're debate. It's usually what there's usually a lot of um, tensions and moments like these. It doesn't feel easy to discuss this film, and people aren't taking it easily. They aren't even dismissing it easily. Everybody wanted to
yeah.
dismiss it and move on and just say it's woke. I'm not paying to see it, and now
Hmm.
everyone feels like they kind of have to, like, wait. Wait a minute, you're telling me I have to, I gotta engage with this? Like, okay,
Yeah,
I gotta slow down, I gotta pump the brakes, and actually gotta uh, I gotta form a serious, well considered take on this. Like, we haven't done that since Avengers Endgame or something. it's kind
yeah,
of it's kind of
yeah,
interesting, or the end of Game of Thrones or something. This could be the new uh, this could be a new, like, paragraph in a chapter of the 2020s, of how we navigate our own sense of identity in the wasteland and the fallout of, like, a post
yeah,
2020, I don't know, post COVID kind of, who are we kind of moment, that couldn't have been told 20 years ago. It would not have landed well. It would have just been a bunch of, like, it would have been a high key materialist, feast of the eyes smorgasbord that didn't have much to say if it came,
yeah. It
the
would have
way
been Troy.
the movie Troy happened.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah. I mean, well,
it's fun to be
like
here
you
for
said,
these kind of moments.
it's a story about uh, a a great, a supposedly great world dying, but dying because it wasn't as um, transcendentally great as it thought. And
Hmm.
but nevertheless, it's not just like game over, suck it up. It's more like, all right, yep, we might have to go off into the sunset, but it's not over. Like
It's
like
not
again,
over.
I don't even know how to land it, because it's this complexity. Um, but it definitely is a story about a dying civilization, but it's not hopeless. But it is sober. There's this That'd be the one adjective I could give this film, as much as I loved it. It's like it is very sober.
That's good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So
with
yeah,
that
this has been
sobering
great.
conclusion, I suppose we leave it there and we let the conversation continue, and we see how folks want to, the fallout when the I don't know, the dust settling, with the fires turned to embers. We'll see
Yeah,
if the culture has decided, what new chapter it wants to tell, and it doesn't want to just continually be a post reflective, reactive, looking back and being, uh, dividing ourselves by what came before, but we're saying, we're actually coming home now this time. We're not just
Yep.
looking back at the burning city that we left behind. Maybe we've got a positive identity we can come home to.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge, man. It doesn't get
Yeah.
any bigger than
Yeah.
that in
I know.
storytelling. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Nick, for this conversation. We've been uh, anticipating. I know we've both been anticipating having a chat on this for a good minute. I'm so glad that we kept our powder dry so that we could hit this. Uh, I'm really glad I saw it,
Yes.
and I'm really glad I talked about it with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I I think it's important if if you want to try to have something in common with your neighbor still, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, this has been great. Thank you, Matt.
yeah. Thank you, and thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate you guys so much, and we'll have more content like this coming up very soon.